Hello, my name is Ian William Barney. I go by the name Billy, that's Billy. And before I get into the site, I would like to briefly explain that a lot of the things in this site are actually dynamically added, and over 60% of it is JavaScript. And if you see me looking down at any point, that's just because I'm looking at my phone, because I took some pictures of the table, and I don't want to explain something that's not on the table for your ears. So I just want to explain things that are kind of on task. So first of all, let's start with our nav. Okay. Now our nav, what it's going to do, it has two out event listeners. So basically, it has a toggle. To toggle is active inside of that add event listener on click command, and then it has the query selector all to then, whenever it's clicked again, untoggles everything inside of the nav or the mobile nav bar A, and then goes ahead and removes that is active and untoggles it. So that's the nav bar and what I did for the JavaScript there. And for the JavaScript for the expand and collapse button, the expand and collapse button has two IDs that it grabs from. First of all, the matches, which is the match section, and then the expand. So it grabs the expanded, and so then upon click, it'll actually go ahead and render it as expanded. There is an add event listener in here as well. Okay, and that add event listener is specific for making sure that if if expand is actually in here, it will only show the first six, and if it is not in there, it will go ahead and show everything. So that collapse and expand button is very easily and vitally used. Okay. So then there's the region button. Now the region button doesn't have a hover effect, and it can be a gray area because not a lot of people would actually be able to see it. Now, it's a button inside of buttons, all right? But the thing about it is it has an add event listener for each one of these, okay? So that basically, whenever I go ahead and hold on, let me go ahead and slide over to my events, all right? Okay, so the region button, it goes ahead and it slides over to the proper carousel. So for whatever region that is clicked, it will then find that region and properly replace the carousel that goes to that said region. And then there's also add event listeners on the previous and next button. So will figure out and find the slide that you're currently on and either add or subtract one to it to then render the previous or the next. All right? And that's specifically for the leagues. And that's the JavaScript for it, by the way, as well. Um, and the add event listeners that go into it. Now then, there's the third-party APIs. Now, all three of these sections, the matches, leagues, and tournament sections, all three gather from the same API with the same key, but have a different URL. All right. Now, the thing is about this is that in the code, you will actually see that it's talking about VODs. Now, the reason I was not able to display the VODs is because the VOD parameter, upon appending it to YouTube watch, I think is equal question mark, it actually won't append to it. Well, rather, it will. You can append it to it. There is a parameter inside of the JSON, the data that can append to it, but unfortunately, it's set to private. So I would have to ask for permission from YouTube and from the people creating the videos, and I just wouldn't have enough time to do anything about it. So all three of these sections actually grab from different APIs. All right, and they're all converted into JSON objects. All right, and then their data is parsed to be rendered and displayed through, as you can see, a table, multiple carousels, as well as a list. All right. All right, and that's for the JSON and for the APIs. Um, and these actually have this one actually has a fetch and store VODs. This one has a fetch and store leagues. And this one has a fetch and store tournaments function. Now, if you go ahead and actually click on inspect and view it, all right, here's the fun little bit. You can go to your console at any given point in time. I don't know why it's having a 404 error out of nowhere, but it'll actually let you know that the VODs, the leagues, and the tournaments have all been stored inside of local storage to then be called upon at any given point in time. All right. And the CSS, I did a couple different things for the CSS. Now, if we go back to our nav, this actually slides with a transition and a transform, as well as also making sure that it goes from left 0 to left 100%. Okay, and that is upon using is active or is not active, which I earlier explained the toggle and remove for that. Okay. Now then, also I didn't want to make a back and forth coral red to midnight blue. So what I did was I used a gradient to actually make sure that this converted slowly but surely over to that coral red color that we were looking for. That's really nice. Okay, and lastly for our CSS, the X button. Yeah, that button was so hard. It actually took me a day to figure it out because I had to rotate it 45 degrees. I had to rotate this top and bottom 45 degrees, and I actually had to make this middle one display as hidden, and give it a actual transition so that it slowly transitions from having an opacity of 1 to having an opacity of 0 upon click, which again has to do with the JavaScript. So as I explained earlier, the next and previous buttons both will have. Sorry, I gotta check my time. Both will have add event listeners to them. Okay, so these add event listeners will, like I said, they will trigger and they will add a slide to it. Add, subtract a slide. Okay. And there is also the add event listener inside of the nav. Okay. Like I said, it needs an add event listener on click for both displaying and hiding. It also needs to be an add or an event listener for the expand and collapse, because otherwise it would just be sitting there, and that would be unfortunate. And that's really my project. Just going into some further explanation here, the purpose of this nav is that at any given point, you can go ahead and click on it. That's all CSS operated. This is all CSS operated. What's being done right there is all CSS operated. Does the same thing in mobile view. Okay, so if you really want to look at what this application is doing and why it's doing this, and also it hides it, you're gonna want to look in the CSS for it and not the JavaScript. But anyway, that's my website. I hope you enjoyed, and welcome to VSports.